Have you ever caught yourself building a perfect image of someone, especially a woman, in your mind, only to have that image crumble in the most unexpected way? Like when you think you know what to expect, and then life throws something sideways, shattering everything you believed. It's unsettling, right? I remember once meeting Anna, a 29-year-old architect living in Portland. She seemed like the embodiment of calm confidence, always composed and decisive. But then one evening, during a casual coffee meetup, she confessed something that caught me off guard. Despite all her accomplishments, she felt deeply misunderstood and at odds with even herself. And it made me realize our illusions about people, particularly women in this case, are often so far removed from reality that they can blind us completely. Today, we're going to peel back some layers, not to tear down for the sake of it, but to understand why our perceptions fall short and how embracing these truths can lead to richer relationships and deeper self-awareness. These aren't meant to be cruel revelations, but invitations to step out of comforting fictions. They are rooted in understanding how complex human nature really is. If you find yourself nodding along or questioning what you thought you knew, you're in the right place. Oh, and if this kind of honest conversation feels like your thing, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more waiting. Let's start with something deceptively simple. Women are often misunderstood not because they are mysterious or unfathomable, but because society pushes them into roles and images that don't fit their true selves. This mismatch creates an invisible tension, a sort of double life between who they feel inside and who they're expected to be. Think about Sarah, a graphic designer from Brooklyn I chatted with recently over Zoom. Curled up on her couch with a soft blanket and half-empty mum beside her. On social media, she projects this bubbly persona full of quirky humor and bright colors. It's charming and inviting. But Sarah shared that under all that cheerfulness lies a constant pressure, not just from others, but herself, to perform this upbeat version regardless of how drained she feels inside. It reminded me how much we tend to mistake public personas for real personalities. Carl Jung noticed this tension long ago when he explored archetypes, these recurring figures or patterns within our psyche shaping how people behave or present themselves. For women especially, cultural archetypes like the nurturing mother or the eternal maiden impose expectations that can trap authentic identity under layers of performance. Here's where it gets tricky. Many people don't realize how deeply these social molds affect women's behavior and self-expression because they blend so seamlessly into daily life. It's like assuming every river flows north, just because most do. It's an unconscious assumption based on partial observation. So, what does this mean practically? First, recognizing the gap between expectation and reality helps dismantle illusions. When interacting with someone, whether a partner, friend, coworker, try asking questions beyond surface impressions. Notice inconsistencies, not as flaws, but as signs of complexity. Let me give you an exercise that helped me shift my perspective here. Next time you're talking with a woman, someone close, or even an acquaintance, pause before jumping to conclusions about her mood or intentions based on common stereotypes, like she's emotional or she wants to please. Instead, mentally note 3 things. 1. What did she actually say, not what you think she meant? 2. What might be influencing her feelings that day outside the obvious? 3. How might societal expectations shape her behavior in subtle ways? This kind of mindful curiosity opens space for empathy rather than judgment. I recall a moment during my own early 20s when I assumed my college roommate was distant just because she rarely joined group conversations. It wasn't until I asked directly about her silence and resisted filling in the blanks myself that I learned she was processing social anxiety, a nuance invisible behind the default label aloof. That one conversation changed our dynamic completely. This first truth about misunderstanding is foundational because it challenges us to step outside quick judgments and consider unseen pressures shaping women's experiences daily. The more we acknowledge these unseen forces, the roles thrust upon them without choice, the more we can appreciate their real selves beneath societal scripts. And honestly, it's exhausting work for everyone involved. The constant balancing act between personal authenticity and external expectation creates stress not often visible unless we look carefully. Before moving forward, does this resonate with something you've felt or witnessed? Sometimes admitting confusion about another person is the first crack through which genuine connection can grow. If so, feel free to share your thoughts down below. I'm curious how this plays out in your world. Anyway, I want to pause briefly here, though no formal break needed, because understanding this first point sets the tone for what follows. Peeling back illusions isn't about criticism, but curiosity. It invites us into complexity rather than simplistic labels. And yes, while some might say, isn't everyone misunderstood? The nuance here matters specifically because gendered expectations create unique pressures on women that ripple through relationships differently than we often realize. So let's recap where we are, without being boring about it. Women live within frameworks shaped by culture and history far beyond individual will. These frameworks sometimes demand roles conflicting with their inner truth. Many keep silent struggles beneath composed surfaces. Recognizing this helps dismantle illusions built on stereotypes. What if, instead of assuming this is just how she is, we embraced uncertainty? Imagine approaching conversations expecting multiple layers rather than straightforward answers. That alone would shift dynamics dramatically. I get it, it sounds abstract until applied daily. So here's one practical method that can help expand perspective. Try journaling briefly after meaningful interactions. Not as, what did she do wrong, but what surprised me, or what could be different beneath surface impressions. You don't need long entries. Even bullet points capturing moments of dissonance help reveal patterns over time. One friend mentioned doing this after family dinners where old roles replayed painfully. Over weeks, she began seeing her mother less as an unchanging figure and more as someone constrained by past experiences herself, a revelation freeing up compassion both ways. This simple practice gradually loosens grip of fixed images by replacing them with lived experience, richer in detail and less prone to snap judgments rooted in illusion. Before wrapping up this section, keep in mind none of this implies women are victims or passive characters. They actively navigate complex inner landscapes amid external expectations, a feat underestimated too often. That tension between internal desires and external demands shapes much of the behaviors we misread, and understanding it gives us tools for patience rather than frustration. All right, since we've unpacked quite a bit already, without drowning in psychology jargon, maybe try applying those 3 question pauses next time you notice yourself making assumptions about someone close. Notice what unfolds when curiosity replaces certainty. If you find value in reflecting on these ideas together or want help exploring other layers, I'm working on related content, diving deeper into relational dynamics informed by Jungian insights. Subscribe if you want those updates quietly delivered without spammy nonsense. And hey, if journaling after social encounters feels awkward at first, no worries. Like any new habit, it takes time before the insights emerge clearly enough to feel meaningful. But patience pays off here too. So here's where I'll leave things for now. Illusions about women often arise from mistaking social masks for real faces. And breaking those illusions starts by opening space for complexities behind appearances. Recognizing unseen pressures helps us move beyond cliches toward genuine understanding, which changes how we relate not only outwardly, but inwardly as well. What do you think? Has anyone ever surprised you by acting differently than your mental picture suggested? Or maybe you've played a role shaped by others' expectations without fully realizing it. I'd love if you'd share those stories below. It reminds me again how messy but fascinating human connections really are. Meanwhile, thanks for sticking around through all this. There's more ahead, diving into other truths equally unsettling yet necessary if we're serious about truly knowing each other beyond surface illusions. See you soon. Picking up from where we left off, there's another layer that often slips quietly under the radar when we think about women and the illusions we hold. The idea that emotions are always transparent, or worse, predictable. You might assume that when a woman expresses anger, sadness, or joy, those feelings are straightforward reflections of the moment. But what if I told you that emotions are more like signals with multiple meanings and sometimes even contradictions hidden beneath their surface? It's not about confusion or manipulation. Rather, it's about the complex interplay between conscious feelings and deeper unconscious currents. I recall a story from Emma, a 41-year-old social worker living in Seattle, who confided in me during a late afternoon walk through Discovery Park. She described how she often felt waves of sudden frustration or melancholy that seemed out of sync with her environment. One evening, after a tense family dinner, she burst into tears, not because of anything recent, but because something ancient inside her was stirring. That something was tied to unprocessed parts of her past, the kind of emotional undertow you can't always see but definitely feel. This reminds me of an insight from Jung's approach to psyche. Emotions are not always linear responses, but can be symbolic messages from ourselves trying to speak up, especially when ignored for too long. The feeling you see might be only the tip of an iceberg whose bulk lies submerged in memories, hopes, fears, or wounds. So here's the catch. Assuming we fully understand someone's emotional state based on immediate expression is like judging a book by its cover, or better yet, a single page without context. Women might express emotions shaped by layers they themselves haven't unpacked yet, and societal expectations often discourage deep emotional exploration in favor of quick labels like "she's just moody" or "too sensitive." These oversimplifications kill nuance and deepen illusions about who they really are. To approach this thoughtfully in real life, try gently acknowledging that what you observe emotionally may be more complex than it appears. Instead of rushing to comfort or dismiss, create space for openness. Here's a practical exercise. Next time you notice someone, maybe a woman close to you, expressing strong feelings that puzzle you, pause and reflect internally before reacting. Mentally ask yourself these questions. 1. Could this emotion be connected to past experiences not immediately visible? 2. What might this feeling be trying to communicate beyond words? 3. How can I show presence without rushing to fix or judge? This stance encourages patience and deeper listening, a subtle but powerful shift. Emma told me later that when her husband started asking open questions instead of jumping straight into problem-solving mode during her emotional moments, their relationship transformed. She felt seen in ways she hadn't before, which isn't always easy given the pressure to keep it together. You don't have to become an expert therapist overnight. Just tuning into this idea gradually shifts how you relate emotionally with others and yourself. Let me throw in a light irony here. As much as emotions can feel overwhelming or confusing at times, both for women expressing them and those witnessing them, they're also what make us unmistakably human. If everything were neat and clear-cut all the time, well, life would probably be boring. And yes, I'm saying this as someone who once tried counting precisely how many moods I had in one day. Spoiler alert, too many. Moving seamlessly forward, there's yet another reality many stumble upon. Women often carry within themselves contradictory desires and fears simultaneously. This isn't just occasional mood swings or indecision. It's about holding opposing inner realities at once. Take Maya's story. She's a 36-year-old journalist from Chicago who shared how she felt torn between craving independence fiercely while simultaneously yearning for deep connection. A tension she says sometimes makes her feel fragmented. One moment, she embraces solitude. The next, she feels lonely despite being surrounded by friends. This internal paradox isn't exclusive to women, obviously, but cultural narratives often expect women to neatly align with one side, usually nurturing and relational, leaving little room for contradictions. Jung identified this as part of psychic wholeness, not denying conflicting parts, but recognizing them as integral components shaping identity. When society demands clear-cut roles or behaviors instead of embracing complexity, illusions thrive because people hide parts they fear won't be accepted. Here's where things get fascinating and messy. Managing these contradictions requires flexibility both inwardly and outwardly. Maya described feeling guilty at times for wanting both freedom and intimacy simultaneously, as if choosing one invalidated the other. So what do we do with such inner conflict? One practical way is to practice self-dialogue. That is, consciously acknowledging both sides within yourself without judgment. Try this exercise. Find a quiet moment, could be morning coffee time or right before bed, and write down 2 statements representing opposing desires or feelings you have about something important, not necessarily related to relationships. For example, I want stability, but also crave adventure. I feel confident, yet insecure. Then write responses from each side addressing the other respectfully. Imagine them as separate voices trying to understand each other instead of battling it out. This process externalizes inner tension and fosters acceptance rather than rejection, which is critical because denying parts leads only to fragmentation by others too. Maya told me that after weeks doing this journaling practice, she started noticing less self-criticism over conflicting feelings and more curiosity about why they coexisted, a small but profound relief in navigating everyday choices. Returning briefly, and yes, I know I said no recap, but bear with me, these contradictions shatter illusions that women, or anyone, must fit tidy molds. They invite us instead towards seeing people as fluid beings capable of holding paradoxes comfortably. And honestly, it makes relationships richer when we stop expecting constant consistency and embrace unpredictability in human nature. If any part of this resonates with your experience or sparks questions, I'd love to hear your stories below. Sharing how you navigate contradictions can deepen collective understanding beyond stereotypes. On a side note, because I tend to go on tangents, this reminds me slightly of how recent trends challenge rigid gender norms online through platforms like TikTok, where creators experiment openly with identities, blending traditionally feminine and masculine traits fluidly. It shows culture itself grappling visibly with complexity previously hidden behind binaries. All right, before moving on too fast, the deeper truth here is embracing contradiction isn't weakness. It's essential strength, rarely celebrated enough publicly, yet fundamental for genuine self-knowledge. In summary, okay, last time, points 2 and 3 highlight how emotions aren't straightforward signals, but layered communications shaped by inner histories, and how contradictory desires coexist within women, challenging simplistic images imposed externally. These insights offer practical ways, for example, pausing before reacting emotionally, engaging in mindful journaling dialogues to foster empathy internally and externally alike. If unpacking these feels useful so far, or if you want tools tailored more personally, I'm putting together guides focused on navigating relational complexity rooted in these ideas, quietly available through my website. Check it out if curiosity strikes sometime down the line without pressure whatsoever. And hey, since we've already embraced complexity today, maybe next time you find yourself puzzled by someone's behavior, remember there could be whole internal worlds resisting simple explanation. And approaching those spaces patiently might just change everything subtly but powerfully over time. Now I'm curious, which contradiction inside yourself have you wrestled with lately? Or perhaps an emotion that didn't make sense at first glance? Sharing helps remind us none of us walk these complicated paths alone, even though it sometimes feels like it does. Thanks again for sticking around. I promise next segment dives into truths equally bold, but focusing on different aspects worth exploring soon. There's one last facet to uncover, something that often catches us by surprise when we think about women beyond the usual narratives: the capacity, and sometimes the necessity, for them to embody contradictions, not only inwardly, but in how they show up outwardly. Not just emotional complexity, but deliberate ambiguity in their roles, desires, and self-presentation as a way to protect, adapt, and even assert themselves in environments that don't always welcome their true selves. I met Leela, a 33-year-old urban planner from Vancouver, on a chilly spring afternoon at a small cafe tucked away near Granville Island. She wore an eclectic mix of vintage leather and delicate scarves. Her eyes sparkled with both warmth and guardedness. Over chai lattes, she told me about how she navigates professional spaces where she feels compelled to act one way, a polished, competent leader, while privately wrestling with doubts and impulses that feel anything neat or predictable. Leela described this as living in two worlds: one expected by others, filled with clarity and certainty; another, internal, where messiness, vulnerability, and questioning thrive. She confessed that this duality isn't just exhausting, it's essential for survival and growth. It's like wearing a mask that sometimes fits too tightly, but gives me space to move safely, she said. This phenomenon, living with purposeful ambiguity, is a powerful strategy women often adopt amid societal constraints. It resists simplistic categorization by allowing fluidity in behavior without complete exposure of inner contradictions or fragility. In some ways, it's an art of balancing presence and privacy simultaneously. Carl Jung touched on similar themes when discussing the persona, the social face we present, and its tension with the authentic self beneath. For many women, managing this tension involves consciously shifting masks depending on context, while secretly holding on to parts that might not fit public expectations but feel true internally. So here's the twist. What looks like inconsistency or indecision from outside may actually be deep wisdom about how to navigate complex social realities without losing oneself entirely. It's not deceit, but adaptive resilience. To engage with this idea practically, next time you observe someone, especially a woman, appearing contradictory or evasive in behavior, instead of jumping to frustration or dismissal, consider this possibility. Her actions might be protective dances rather than true contradictions. Try an exercise in observation without immediate judgment. The next few days, notice moments when someone shifts moods or styles quickly, perhaps upbeat, then withdrawn, or presents different sides depending on setting, work versus home. Instead of labeling these changes as confusing or erratic, mentally note them as intentional masks worn for specific purposes. Reflect quietly. What might she be protecting or negotiating through these shifts?
How does this flexibility serve her identity or safety? How can recognizing this add compassion rather than impatience? Leela found that once people around her stopped demanding rigid consistency and accepted her multifaceted self, even if only implicitly, her relationships improved markedly. The freedom to inhabit multiple modes without penalty became a source of empowerment rather than stress. On a lighter note, because life can't be all heavy insights,
I was reminded recently of watching a viral video where a woman went from fierce boss mode in one clip to playful dad joke teller seconds later. A perfect example of embracing contradictions publicly and joyfully breaking stereotypes at once. But beyond laughs lies something profound. When we stop forcing people into single categories or fixed images, especially women who are culturally pressured into narrow roles, we open doors for richer authenticity and connection. All right, time for some reflection yourself before this wraps up. Can you identify moments when you've worn different masks to handle expectations? Maybe at work, you're all business, but at home, more relaxed. Or perhaps there are sides you hide because revealing them feels unsafe. Try journaling those experiences tonight. Name the masks you wear and why. This awareness is crucial because only by acknowledging our own complexity can we better accept it in others. Now, if you've traveled this far with me today through layered truths that challenge illusions about women, I want to leave you with something less about facts and more about possibility. Imagine stepping into your relationships with partners, friends, colleagues with fresh eyes, shaped not by stereotypes or surface impressions, but by patience for complexity. The hidden pressures shaping behaviors, the emotional depths beneath expressions, the contradictory desires held simultaneously. The adaptive masks worn not out of deception, but survival. What might change if instead of seeking certainty about others' identities or feelings, you embraced questions? What if discomfort caused by unpredictability became invitations rather than threats? It strikes me that learning to hold these tensions is less about solving puzzles perfectly and more about cultivating spaciousness inside ourselves for paradoxes living among us all. That spaciousness is fertile ground for empathy, not quick fixes, and from empathy comes authentic connection. This isn't easy. Our minds crave neat answers, but it's necessary if we want relationships free from illusions built on incomplete pictures. Because real connection doesn't demand perfection, it thrives on acceptance of imperfection. So here's an invitation worth pondering long after this video ends. Resist reducing women or any person to simple categories born from cultural scripts. Instead, meet them where they are, in their contradictions, complexities, vulnerabilities, and strengths intertwined, as fellow travelers forging meaning amid messy human experience. Maybe it sounds idealistic, yet I've witnessed over years how such openness softens walls hardened by misunderstanding, how curiosity replaces judgment, how shared humanity shines through when illusions dissolve enough to reveal true faces under those necessary masks. And isn't that worth pursuing? To step beyond surface illusions toward fuller understanding, not just of others, but ourselves too. I'll leave you with one final thought. Every person carries multitudes unseen at first glance, including ourselves. What happens if we treat those multitudes with gentle curiosity rather than impatient certainty? Perhaps then illusions don't shatter painfully. They simply dissolve quietly as we learn anew what it means to know each other deeply. Thanks for sharing your time today. If any part resonated or sparked reflection, please share your thoughts below.
I'm eager to hear how these ideas unfold in your life, because dialogue enriches us all beyond solitary insight. Until next time, keep embracing complexity gently. It's where true growth lives quietly waiting beneath our hurried assumptions.